Have you ever thought about how life makes copies of itself? I mean, not just in the usual way, but making exact, perfect replicas? Well, today we're going to explore this incredible world of nature's very own copy machines.
So think about it for a second. We've got photocopiers, 3D printers, but how did nature figure this out millions of years ago? How does a living thing create a perfect duplicate of itself, with no machine in sight?
Well, the answer is a wild process called asexual reproduction. It's when a single parent can create offspring all by itself. And the new offspring? They're genetically identical. Yep, you heard that right. They are perfect clones. So how does this actually work? Nature is pretty clever, and it has a few different strategies. Let's kick things off with the most straightforward method there is, the simple split. This first one is called binary fission. It's the go-to move for tiny single-celled organisms like bacteria. And honestly, the name kind of gives it away. Binary means two, and fission means to split. So, one cell literally just splits into two.
And the process itself, it's incredibly simple. First, the cell makes a copy of all its DNA, its genetic instruction manual. Then, it starts to stretch itself out. And finally, poof! It just pinches right in the middle and splits into two new identical cells. That's it.
But there's always a trade-off, right? The huge advantage here is speed. I mean, bacteria can multiply like crazy this way. But the downside is a big one. There's zero genetic variety. If one of them is vulnerable to something, they're all vulnerable because they're all exactly the same. All right, let's check out our next strategy. What if splitting your whole body in half isn't your style? What if you could just, grow a new version of yourself right off your side?
Well, that's called budding. Instead of splitting, the parent organism grows a tiny version of itself, a bud, right on its body. It really is like a little mini-me that eventually just pops off to live on its own. Or sometimes it just stays attached to the parent.
And this isn't just for microscopic stuff. We see this in really cool creatures like the hydra, in the yeast that makes our bread rise, and even in corals that build those massive, beautiful reefs. When the buds stay attached, they can form a whole colony of clones. And once again, we see that same basic deal. On one hand, it's super fast, and building a colony can be a great defense. On the other hand, you've got that same big risk, no genetic variation. Plus, if too many buds stick around, things can get pretty crowded, and they all end up competing for food.
Okay, so we've covered splitting and budding. But what about more complex life, like fungi and plants? Oh yeah, they have some seriously clever cloning tricks of their own. First, let's talk spores. Things like mushrooms and ferns will release thousands, sometimes millions, of these tiny, super tough little cells out into the world. Each spore is like a microscopic time capsule, protected by a hard shell, just waiting for the perfect time and place to start growing. So this strategy is really a numbers game. The huge advantage is you can spread millions of potential copies of yourself over massive distances, but it is definitely high risk, high reward. The sad truth is, most of those spores will never find a good spot to land and grow.
Now for a method I promise you've seen before, even if you didn't know what it was called: vegetative reproduction. This is when a whole new plant can grow from just a piece of the parent, a stem, a root, or even a leaf, no seeds needed at all. And this is stuff you see every day. Ever noticed a strawberry plant sending out those long stems or runners to plant a new strawberry nearby? Or how you can grow a whole potato plant from just one potato? Those are all real-world plant clones in action. This method is super reliable, which is exactly why farmers love it. If you have one amazing potato plant, you can use its potatoes to grow a whole field of amazing potato plants. But the big disadvantage is that the new plants are stuck right next to the parent, and if a disease shows up, the whole cloned family is in big trouble. Okay, so we've seen organisms split, bud, and grow from spores and stems. Now let's tie it all together and really look at the big picture, what I like to call the clone conundrum. With all these different methods, the main goal is the same: make lots of copies, make them fast, and do it all by yourself. It's a super efficient way to reproduce, but they all share the exact same weakness.
And that brings us right here to the ultimate trade-off. Every single method we've talked about is fast, it's simple, and it doesn't use a lot of energy. But every single one comes with the same major risk: a total lack of genetic diversity. Every single offspring is an identical copy. And that lack of diversity, that's a massive gamble. Just imagine that whole field of cloned potatoes. If a brand new disease shows up that can kill just one plant, it could wipe out the entire field because they all have the exact same vulnerability. There's no backup plan.
So that leaves us with one last really fascinating question. If being a clone is so incredibly risky, why do so many living things, from the tiniest bacteria to the plants we eat, depend on it? Why is this high-stakes strategy one of the most successful and common on our planet? Now that is something to think about.